Hey, in this video I'm going to show you how to set up a MERN stack with Nginx on an AWS EC2 instance. If you're interested in just reading about this and not watching this video, the first link in the description is a whole tutorial explaining everything I'm going to do. I'm actually just going to follow that tutorial, but some people are very interested in watching and seeing how I do it, so I'm also going to do it in in this video. As you can see, this is the tutorial I'm talking about. This is the setting up a MERN stack on AWS EC2. It's on my Medium. One thing I'll need you to do is have an AWS account set up, and I also need you to be signed in to it. So that's what I explain in here. I just explain that often I hate when I can't spin up a server and it doesn't work, and there's I have to follow like 4 or 5 different tutorials. This is going to set it up with an SSL certificate, all of that as well. I'm also here. I have a shameless plug. As you know, on this channel, I introduced something called Easy API. It's JSON storage, and file storage. So the idea is, instead of actually setting up a server, you can just create JSON objects and save them privately on with Easy API. So if you just head over to easyapi.io, you can actually see the full documentation right here. So in order to create an object, all you have to do is literally ping this endpoint with your JSON object, and it will store it. So that's that. So if you're just setting up a simple project, I really recommend using Easy API. Again, that's a personal shameless plug. And keep scrolling down. So then we actually are going to get to the setting up an EC2 instance. This is being done on a Ubuntu 16.04. Now you can do this on any Ubuntu server. So this can work on DigitalOcean or Linode as well. But this is just for the AWS EC2. I'm just going to show you with that. So start by opening up your AWS dashboard. Navigate over to EC2, and then on the left side you're going to go to Instances. And you're going to launch new instance. Okay, so now you're looking at your images. You have the Amazon Linux. You want a Ubuntu 16 server. Hit select. You want the free tier, hit next, hit next, hit next, hit next. The reason why you want to add a security group, so that's why you do not want to just hit review and launch. You want to add HTTP, you want to add another rule for HTTPS. And then you want to hit review and launch. You want to hit launch, and you want to create a new key pair. You want to download that key pair. You want to hit launch. And this, you need to save this. You need to save the key pair because that's how you're going to sign into your EC2 instance. So you need a new window for in a terminal. So let me back over here, just showing you the steps. So what we want to do is CD over to the spot you downloaded it to. So I have mine in downloads right now. I should really move it, but I mean this is just a. So I'm going to do a chmod 400, make that a little bigger, and then the next thing you're going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this into the internet browser, because my thing is called temp_demo. That's what my key pair is, and then I'm going to go to my instance here and grab this public IPv4, and you can find that under instances, and you just take that and you stick it in here, copy paste that, and as you can see it's going to say SSH-I, your key pair, Ubuntu add, and then your IPv4. Hit enter, type in yes, and boom, you're logged into your EC2 instance. You have to make sure it's up and running as well. So first thing you're going to do is upgrade everything, update everything. You will get this window probably, and the one I go with is install the maintainers package. Okay, once that's done, I'm going to choose install the package maintainers. It's going to keep updating. I've also opened up my domain, so in order to get an SSL certificate you need to have a domain. You can't verify an IP address, and so I'm going to use a domain that's expiring soon called opentrafficapi.com. So I'll open up GoDaddy, and I've gone into my DNS. And what I'm actually going to do with that is I'm going to use this public IP here. I'm going to copy it, place it in here, and hit save. Now that may take a few minutes to render and stuff, but since I'm installing, this isn't going to load anything yet because I haven't actually set up the Nginx at all or anything else. So once this is done, it's now done. So we're going to start the beginning to install Nginx. So here I'm going to run the install, and this is going to run the status. I should also mention that I'm going to include this link below, but this is the code that I'm going to be using here. It's relatively simple. You'll need to have access to this. You'll need to actually fork it because you'll need to put an SSH key in. So hit the fork button on the top right corner and if you're going to make it public, do not include passwords. So if you're your database, do not include passwords. The git ignores this config file that's supposed to exist in here. And so I'll show you all that when we actually go to do it. Okay, that's done. So now if I run sudo this, it'll check the status. It'll say it's running active. I hit Control-C to cancel. I want to actually start up Nginx, and I want to make sure it starts on startup. Okay, so Nginx is now installed. Next thing we're going to do is set up Node.js. So we'll just run an update just to make sure we have all our packages up to date. And we're going to be using NVM to install it. So if you head over to the NVM page, which is on GitHub, NVM standing for Node Version Manager, as you can see. It'll tell me my current version is 33.5, 0.33.5, and that's important because that's the number you want. You want the most recent one. And so in this, I'll try to keep this tutorial up to date, but I might not be able to. I'm just going to clear that. I'm going to copy and paste and run this command. I'm going to type in Y for yes. Okay, once that's done, you want to cd over to your directory. Since it's still 33.5, I don't need to change anything. I'm going to take this command here, curl. And what it's done is it's put an install script right there. And so I just want to run the install script. And I'm going to say, okay, my bash profile, reload it. I want to install Node 6 or NVM 6. I want to use Node 6. And once that's done, I'm going to change it to say use it. So now if I go node-v, which checks the node version, it's on Node 6, and I can do an npm-v, which is, and tells me what npm version I'm on. So now we have Node installed. So next we're going to add our domain. And so as I've done, I've pointed the DNS to the IP, so with the A record. What we're going to do is we have this file here. I'm actually going to print it out so you can see it. Let's do sudo. That doesn't work. And it's sudo cat, and then here it comes with a whole bunch of uncommented out stuff. It's default. You can keep it if you want, but I prefer to remove it and just rewrite it all because like I only write with the lines that are actually necessary. So I'm going to do paste that, paste that, which removes it, and I'm going to do sudo, and I now have a blank file. So on port 80, which is your HTTP, which what we added in the rules when setting up, we're going to change this to be my proper domain. You change it to be yours. So I'm using something called opentrafficapi.com. I'm pretty sure it's available by the time you watch this video, or will be. opentrafficapi.com. It's going to point to port 8080 on the local host, which is 127.0.0.1. 8080 is what this code points to. Redirection will be off because we're using MERN, so we want to use the React router, and we don't want to redirect when it doesn't find the actual HTML file. And we're going to hit Control X, which lets us write out and save, and I hit a Y there, and we saved it. So now if I do that same cat, that's all that's in there. If you don't have a domain, you don't do server name here, just remove that line. It tells you to change your IP address on your DNS record, and then just reload that file, and that's what that does. And this should say bad gateway now. Oh, sorry, I used this same domain for bad gateway. But you can see the React MERN code I mean, that's from like cache, so just ignore that. Okay, so that's all set. Now we have to set up MongoDB. So you're gonna run this command, which installs Mongo. I got these instructions from the actual Mongo website. Now that's done, you're gonna run the update. So you just want to update all the packages. You're gonna start it, and then you're gonna verify it's started properly. It's gonna have the same active running. Start it. Active and running. Control C to cancel out of there. Okay, so the last thing is Mongo's currently using, it's not using authentication, which we want to do. We want to actually use a database. So what you're going to do is type in Mongo. I just realized I didn't include it in here. You're going to say use the database name that you want to use. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to call my database MyDB_name. I'm going to create this user. Recommend change the username and password here. I'm not going to, because I'm going to delete this entire instance. So it says successfully added user here. And now, so the last thing I want to do is verify that this user can actually be authenticated. So I'm going to hit enter here, and it returns 1, and therefore it can be authenticated. So the last thing I'm going to do is hit exit. But my Mongo's authentication is still turned off. So this next line just requires me to change my Mongo authentication. It says, here's the port, and I'm gonna just uncommon authentication there and hit save. So that was, I just wrote out and then saved, exited. And so that's two things that are set up. The last thing we're gonna do is actually add not the last thing, but one of the last things is actually add our code to the server so that we know. So I'm gonna do a CD into the SSH folder, do SSH keygen. I'm just hitting enter here. It's now generated an SSH key, do a cat, which just prints out. This you'll have to actually fork. This is why you actually have to fork it, because you won't be able to go into settings on my repository. I hit deployment key, I'm going to say this is a server key, paste that there. I'm going to allow write access just because okay, so now I've added the SSH key, so now you can clone the repo without actually having to log in on the server, which you don't want because you can't control that. So you want to be able to pull access from the repo from the server at any time. So you want to do a git clone, and I'm using the SSH key here. So instead of use HTTPS, I'm cloning with SSH. As you can see, I had no issues, so it's cloned. So now it's going to tell me to CD into my repo name, which is MERN boilerplate, run npm install. That's going to install, and so I should be able to run start.dev, and it's going to fail. I'm going to tell you that right now, because it doesn't have this config.config folder, because this is all open source, so config is in the git ignore, but we're going to have to create a file that looks exactly like this. So with that, we're going to run two commands. There's two options. If you have this MERN code private, you can remove the git ignore from the config file from the git ignore, because it's private and you don't have to worry about someone seeing your password. But if you're like me and this is public, what we're going to do is we're going to just do it on the server. And what I mean by that is we're going to do a move, and we're going to move from config example, and we're going to move it into config/config.js, which is what it looks for. So now if I do a config/config.js, it has username, password, URL, port, DB. We don't have any of that information, and so what I'm going to tell you to do is copy these two lines, because I'm going to do a sudo nano config/config, and you're going to remove these two lines, and you're going to eventually change the db_dev, but you're going to run it as dev just to verify that everything's properly installed. And so I'm going to save that. I should also just mention that change this example user and change this info, or my username and password. Yours should be changed, and they should match what's above. Port 27017 is the port that I'm putting my Mongo on, and then my DB name is actually my database name. And so with all that, you should be able to run it. Okay, so I've gotten this error before. My result is just as simple as this. No, I don't want to do that. No, stop. So I want to remove my DB. And I want to say npm install again. For some reason, sometimes that CSS loader doesn't load properly, and that's fine. Okay, so that's failing again, but let's try something else. Run start. Okay, so that CSS loader isn't working properly. So let's try running it, installing it manually. So npm install CSS. Nope, that's not it. CSS loader. No such file directory. Module build filled. Try that again. If I clone this to my computer, I know it runs immediately. It just sometimes this fails, and I had it failed. I fixed it for some reason. I believe I fixed it by just removing the node modules folder. Just did a reinstall. No such file directory scanned in. I'm going to have to file an issue with this. I'm going to just take a photo of it. Yeah, so I just ran it again. It's worked. All I did was remove the node modules directory. Did an npm install with the CSS loader. Here you can see my past commits. Let me just actually shut that down. So I removed the node modules directory. Did an npm install with the CSS loader. Eventually, just worked. That's all you have to do. So I'm going to start that up again. It's going to take a few seconds to start up. And so if I go back to my internet browser here, it will have, as you can see, it's there. If I hit new counter, it'll create a counter in the database. So it's now created. If you look through the actual MERN code, and so that's how we know that the database is working. Next is so I can't just run this dev server constantly, because as you can see, I'm currently in a process. I need it all to be run in the background. So we're going to use npm2. We're going to use pm2 to run it. So you run npm install pm2 globally to install it globally. You don't need it specifically for this package, and all we're going to do is run this pm2 start server.js, and we're going to run the production environment, and that's how we can actually differentiate from our dev and our production, our DB and our DB underscore dev, is because personally I run my dev without a username and password when it's on my own local host, because I know that it's very secure and it's just for me. But when I'm on my server, I need a username and password. And same with my, if I'm using Stripe or something, so my Stripe has test keys and it has production keys, but I don't accidentally push my test keys to production. And so that's how I kind of differentiate them. There's a variable called isDev in server.js. Now take a look at that, and by adding this production flag, we know that we're in production. So I'm gonna run this. And so as you can see, it's now online. If I go to that, I can reload this, and it's still working. So we're online. I can look at the information about it by running this. It shows you how to run code, and you can stop the server with the following. The very last thing we're going to do is actually add. We're actually going to add our SSL certificate. Thank you. And we're going to use this here, which is the cert bot. Press enter. Get created. You do an update. You're going to install Python certbot for Nginx. Hit yes. That's not done. So just say inactive. You want to remove the HTTP, and the last thing you're going to do is this here. And so I want to use opentrafficapi.com, and I want to use -d www.opentraffic. And this just says, you know, if they come to either the one with the www or without, I want it to be able to be encrypted. And so this is add an email. So just add my email. I'm adding my own email. Add your own. I agree. Sure. Contact me about it. Great. Gonna sign it and everything else. It verifies that everything is redirected to this domain. It says option number 1, no redirect. So if they go to HTTP and then your domain, they'll stay there. I want them to redirect always to HTTPS. I recommend this because you always want them to be on end-to-end encryption with the SSL certificate. So that's good. We're gonna add another layer of security. Just run the following command. It literally says this is gonna take a long time. Okay, so mine's complete now. You just pause the video if yours isn't, and then do a sudo. And we're gonna jump back in that our file for Nginx, our configuration file. All these things were added by the certbot, and the only line we have to add is this one right here, which essentially points to that extra layer of SSL. And hit save, and we're gonna verify the syntax of our code. It's test failed. Says it's a duplicate. Alright. Apparently that code isn't needed anymore. Reload it. And we have to update it, have our SSL update. I'm going to use number 2. This is just going to say, you know, in the middle of the night, quietly update or renew our SSL certificate. Hit close. And then we're going to cd back into our repo and start up our server for the last time. And we're going to start into production. And it's now online. And so then we're done. So I do this. It's now on HTTPS. It's loaded. It's connected to a database. So thank you for watching this video. I know it was a little bit long. Hopefully you liked it. Please subscribe. That's how I know people are interested. Please also on Medium follow me and give a clap. I guess that's what they call it. Any questions, ask below. If anything's changed, ask them below.